Hello, and welcome to another edition of Heavy Hands. I'm Connor. That there is Phil.
Hello.
And we have some middleweights to talk about to you today. Now, I could hear just a wave of disappointment and discontent. Middleweights. But wait! It's a top middleweight contenders fight, and the guys don't even really look like they suck completely. Which is not necessarily a given, even with top middleweight contenders. I would say...
not even with middleweight champions is it a given.
That's true. In fact, I would say this looks like one of the more compelling matchups possible among the new crop of middleweights, and seems guaranteed to be to end in the creation of a number one contender kind of fighter. It is Nasruddin Imavov versus Caio Borralho. A pretty solid fight night main event, I've gotta say, for this Paris card. And it's not the only good fight on this card. It is, like a lot of modern UFC cards, a lineup that sort of loses steam not long into the prelims. In fact, they seem to have tried to, resist that impression by booking Rinat Fakhretdinov in, the second from last bout on the prelims. They're like, see? There's good stuff even at the bottom of the card. But in addition to Imavov Borralho, we've got Benoit Saint-Denis versus other fighting nerd, Mauricio Ruffy, in the co-main event. I don't particularly care for Modestas Bukauskas, Paul Craig, or Bolaji Oki, Mason Jones, although I'm sure that will be fun. But we also have...
I think this will be interesting.
I agree.
think Modestas Bukauskas, Paul Craig will be fun.
Yeah, it'll be something. But Patricio Pitbull is fighting again. Well, not to say that will necessarily be fun either. In fact, if he has his way, it will probably be a drag. But it is an interesting sort of trap matchup for the former long-time featherweight Bellator champion. He's taking on a man by the name of Losene Keita. And apologies, I'm sure I'm mispronouncing that. But a very physically imposing, but technically quite raw looking prospect. This is his UFC debut. He's had quite a long career in the Czech Octagon promotion. Apparently the Czech Republic safe from American copyright law. I've always wondered how they got away with that one. But it's like, hey, once I was in Amsterdam, Phil, and I saw a restaurant with a hand-painted sign reading Shake and Steak.
Nice.
You ever been to a Steak and Shake over here in the U.S.?
No.
Not bad. Pretty good. Midwestern fast food joint, actually. Pretty good burgers, pretty good shakes. But I can't speak for the one owned by the Turkish men in Amsterdam. I don't know. The Octagon of Midwestern fast food franchises. Anyway, those are our main card fights. We got, like I said, Rinat Fakhretdinov, William Gomes on this card. He is actually, I'm kind of becoming a fan of that guy. Realizing he's more than just a pure neutralizer. He's actually got some fight in him. There's a couple other interesting ones sprinkled throughout here. But a card like this lives and dies on its main event. And I will repeat, Nasruddin Imavov versus Caio Borralho is a quality main event. And not a particularly easy fight to call. I suppose that's part of the quality.
Yeah, it's one where you've got a guy with a very meat and potatoes game who has been sort of steadily overperforming of late.
Mm-hmm.
And a guy who's becoming a little bit more dynamic and threatening.
Mm-hmm.
And a guy who's a complete physical force who's been cleaning up his game on the technical side. So they're kind of coming together to meet each other at what looks like, and looks like one of the best kind of fights for that kind of thing is that they're, relatively young. talented fighters who seem to be peaking. And that's kind of what you want from this kind of matchup.
Right. It's like when you take a quality prospect versus prospect matchup and just elevate it to contender status, right? It has the same kind of just a frisson of excitement when you think about it. How's this gonna go?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I do have a salient point to make. I'm not sure how early I should spoil our analysis by just bringing it up. I will say that Caio Borralho, I may as well do it now, Phil. He is a southpaw. A converted southpaw, in fact, a very lead hand dependent southpaw. I believe he's a right-handed gentleman. So we may as well discuss the prospect early. How well do you think Nasruddin Imavov does against southpaws?
Oh God, not well.
There are probably some pre-UFC matchups where that question was tested, but in the UFC, he has faced
exclusively orthodox fighters.
Yeah, like a couple switch hitters is really the best you can have, and most of the guys who are switch hitters are not really like. They don't do it because they're really good at a southpaw, if you know what I mean. They do it because their footwork is kind of wherever, and they'll just do whatever. You know, Borralho himself is a bit of a switcher, but he mostly operates out of a southpaw stance where, again, his primary weapon is his lead hand. His jab and his right hook are his best shots. So yeah, it's a question worth asking.
Yeah, no, that does actually change the dynamic a little bit, doesn't it? Yeah, I think with Imavov, the main thing that we've seen from him is that he's just learned not to panic.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's really what's allowed him to become so much more functional as an MMA fighter, is that, you know, going back to his... And again, like, it's a steady progression that you can see throughout his fights. Mm-hmm. He doesn't look very different if you look at his early fights, you know, with the way that he starts. But as soon as things start to get tough, you can see the sort of mental meter start to dip, and then you can see him start to get knackered. Which led to him doing things like dropping a decision to Phil Hawes. Which has not aged very well at all.
Certainly not.
But, over time he's just become less and less likely to, tire himself out with his own work, and less likely, and then eventually, less likely to be tired out by the work of his opponents.
Yeah, and also just better at operating when tired.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he's still got pretty gassed in that matchup with Brendan Allen. To be fair, it was a matchup with a lot of grappling, not all of which was initiated by Brendan Allen, but he conducted himself pretty well despite the exhaustion, which is much more important than being a guy who just never gets tired.
Yeah.
Again, and it probably speaks to a different source of exhaustion to begin with, right? As you pointed out, I think he was getting so completely tired with such regularity before because he was not comfortable. And anxiety produces a really particularly horrible kind of fatigue in a fight.
Yep.
Because the two reinforce each other. You get fatigued because you're nervous, and then you're fatigued and still nervous, which is just a horrible, horrible feeling. If you're going to get fatigued but you're comfortable, and your technique doesn't completely fall apart, it's honestly fine. It's almost makes not being Merab Dvalishvili not really a problem. I mean, hell, look at a guy who fought Dvalishvili, whose name I'm blanking on for some reason. Caucasian guy. Why am I blanking?
Umar Nurmagomedov?
Yes. He got he was completely thrashed by the end of that
fight. To be fair,
fight.
it is a very forgettable name in MMA.
Yes, that's yeah. Thank you for that. He was completely thrashed by the end of that fight. He was dead tired, but he still conducted himself very well because he was comfortable. And I think, yeah, that's the level that Imavov has reached that has made such a difference.
Yeah. Because, yeah, as mentioned, other than that, he still remains like the same very meat and potatoes fighter that he's been. He's basically a decent jab, a 1-2, some sneaky uppercuts, and takedowns that, as you sort of pointed out, he will go for whether he should or not.
Yeah.
But yeah, just like a very, very meat and potatoes fighter, which in middleweight, as it turns out, is once again a superpower.
Sure.
Everything's a superpower at middleweight. Just being like having a broadly, decently constructed game can be as much of a difference maker as just being like good at one thing.
Right.
And yeah, that sort of served him very well. I think the main question here is that he came up against Israel Adesanya and basically really sort of beat Adesanya at his own game of the low kicks and jabs, and then occasionally like capitalizing on that. And the main question is obviously, how much is this due to Israel Adesanya being completely washed?
Yeah. I think Adesanya undeniably passed his best, and I think he probably has been for a long time, but much as I resisted the comparison so early in his career, because it's just so predictable, the man did do an Anderson Silva in hanging on to his title while probably not being the version of himself that he once was for a long time.
Yeah. Yep.
I still think it actually means something, even now, to beat Israel Adesanya. I would have liked to see the fight go on longer, because this is just an enduring question about Imavov. We can say pretty confidently that he has addressed the worst aspects of his tendency to fatigue, but you just gotta wonder, like, we've seen that tested by who? Like Brendan Allen? What happens if he's fatigued against somebody fast and accurate and powerful like Israel Adesanya, which Caio Borralho can be. And Borralho does not seem to have any tendency to gas. He seems to be a supremely well-conditioned fighter, even in his the kind of Donnybrook that he had with Jared Cannonier, his last fight. It seemed to be a technical step up for him, and a fight where he really proved that he could scrap for 5 rounds at a pretty fast pace and be perfectly fine at the end. So I do, so obviously the southpaw thing, it's a difficult question to answer. You just kind of have to address it, and then you can let it enter into your pick, but I would certainly like to imagine that Imavov will know how to fight a southpaw. I don't know if he does. I would like to imagine that a guy who uses his jab as much as Imavov will continue using it. Certainly Borralho will be using his jab. Supposing he does fight normally, which is to say using his entire skill set, I do still wonder about Borralho as well. He definitely showed some improvements against Cannonier. We saw some pretty solid defense, much smaller, tidier movements, more comfortable actually hanging around in range with Cannonier, especially as the fight went on. On the other hand, Borralho remains very much a one-and-done fighter. He threw like 3 combinations in that entire fight with Cannonier, and not by coincidence, almost every time he did throw a combination, he hurt Cannonier. because he's fast and he throws punches with pretty solid form. But he couldn't convince himself to do it with regularity. And this was even more the case in his matchup with Abusupyan Magomedov. And if we have to ask how Imavov does against a southpaw, I think it's also worth asking, how does Borralho do against a big, tall guy?
Yeah.
Because his fight against Abus Magomedov was almost entirely conducted off the back foot at long range. And it took him a really long time to get comfortable enough with the distance to actually step in and hit a guy who, honestly, I would have probably rather liked him to be pressuring from the beginning, because I think that's what makes Abus Magomedov crumble. He's very comfortable pressuring, even if he doesn't get to touch you very often, which he didn't, because Borralho does move around pretty well. But I'm not sure. Borralho, whose instinct seemed to be to fight from long range, I'm not sure how well he'll do against somebody who is really dangerous from that range.
Yeah. And who's very quick. And again, assuming that his game is to some extent intact, is very happy to pile up a points lead without taking risk. I mean, pile up is perhaps not the right word to use for Imavov, but he has a long, very quick jab that he will simply throw out. And again, he's mostly, a 1 or 2 at a time at most fighter, but that also means that he does not give up space.
Right.
Does not allow someone like Borralho in to land big shots on him in the way that Borralho could against Cannonier, who is a bit of a golem.
Right.
He will simply jab him and then move back away, and that will be it. And next time he will maybe feint the jab and throw an uppercut or something like that. But he's very determined to keep what he considers his optimal distance. Again, as you said, the southpaw thing now, I really can't get it out of my head.
I know, that's what I was wary of mentioning.
Because MMA fighters are they're so consistently terrible at it when you haven't seen them do it. You're like, surely he must know. Surely he must know.
Yeah.
But they just go in there and they just don't. I mean, admittedly, you can't. It's always different to perform under the bright lights than it is to do it in sparring.
Yeah.
And you build up a series of reactions that are associated with, the sound of the crowd and the feel of the very specific feel of the UFC mat under your feet. And, and your brain learns these things, and your brain learns that, under these specific situations, these smells, these sounds, these feelings, under these situations, we fight right-handed people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so I think there is a very strong possibility that, there's lots of people that do genuinely try to see, to build anti-southpaw plans, right, and they just go straight out of their head.
Yeah. It's it's difficult to maintain any kind of new pattern of thinking without the right reps, and none of those reps in the gym, as you say, really replicate the experience of doing it on the night.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, this is the case in boxing too. It's not, in boxing at least, you can expect that a good portion of guys who fight their first southpaw will do okay, will at least conduct themselves like a fighter with 2 hands. But orthodox boxers hate southpaws too, for the same reason. And it's just the simple math that southpaws fight almost exclusively orthodox fighters, and orthodox fighters fight almost exclusively orthodox fighters. It's just an unfair advantage, more experience with the feel of that open stance matchup.
Mm-hmm.
But Yeah, I mean, given that Borralho may allow or even insist on a lot of this fight being conducted from kicking range, and indeed may insist on a kicking battle, I do wonder how much trouble that might give Imavov. I mean, he, as you said, he did play the kicking game with Adesanya pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. It's a tough one to call. It's tough for me to get a clear image of what the shape of this fight is going to be.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, coming into this fight, I was relatively strongly on the side of Borralho.
Mm-hmm.
And then you said something which pushed it more in his direction. And even now, I just find myself thinking, like, do I actually trust him to be able to, like, cover distance?
Right.
Against someone who's not going to give it to him. Or against someone who's not going to stand there, like Cannonier. I mean, Imavov fought Cannonier as well.
Mm-hmm.
And he actually did better than Borralho did.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing about Imavov is that he's not just a jabber. He is a 1-2 merchant, which means that, that was kind of what allowed him to beat Adesanya, is that eventually Adesanya was like, oh, we're doing jabs at range. And then, Imavov was the one who was actually following his jab up with something.
Mm-hmm.
So what if, like, Imavov just starts doing, orthodox Kelvin Gastelum things to Borralho?
Mm-hmm.
He just starts lighting him up with 1-2s. Again, I can totally see it happening. I'm very confused by this fight. I just don't know what I'm getting more confused by the dynamics the more I think about it.
I know.
And the more tape I watch.
That's why it's a good matchup.
Yeah. Because I was like,
anything could happen.
Yeah. Because I was expecting, like, Borralho was going to be more threatening inside, and that's probably true. But I just thought, like, before I started watching tape, I just thought he would have more of a pace advantage than he actually has.
Right. Yeah, he historically, that Cannonier fight was, like, far and away his most active fight. And
mm-hmm.
Maybe it's a good sign. It's his most recent one, but it's hard to say whether that actually represents the start of a trend at this point, since we've only seen it once, or whether that was just something about the dynamic with Cannonier. The Cannonier being a less mobile fighter, less threatening at long range, allowed Borralho to feel more comfortable playing right on the edge of or completely inside of range as often as he did. And it's a real thing, you just go against somebody much taller than you, and they can touch you and you can't touch them. And it's just hard to actually get the sense of your distance. Again, I fully expect Borralho to be using a lot of kicks. I expect him to be calf kicking and body kicking, and maybe it just doesn't matter if he fights at a high pace. Like, whether he's gotten more comfortable getting tired or not, Imavov does still tend to slow down the longer the fight goes. And Borralho is a very disciplined fighter. He would be quite happy, I think, to just slow roll this and to rack up a trade of damage, and not even necessarily have to stay way out ahead of Imavov in terms of pace, but just be able to maintain his exact pace for longer. My instinct is to pick Borralho. I think he is the one improving technically more at this stage of his career, and learning a kind of strategic flexibility that I'm not sure Imavov has.
Yep.
And there's the southpaw thing, but
yep. There's the southpaw thing. There's the fact that his physical ceiling is simply higher. There's the typically an X factor in this kind of matchup, but not actually that much of an X factor given Imavov's tendencies.
Mm-hmm.
There's the ground game.
Yeah.
Borralho is a very good grappler. Extremely tough to get anything to work against him. He's one of these guys that I suspect is actually possibly a slightly better grappler than he is a striker.
Yeah, an inconsistent takedown artist, though, it has to be said.
Yeah. But I think Imavov could potentially both tire himself out and get stuck in bottom position, which will instantly, I suspect, gas him out horrifically.
Yeah.
Or like very quickly gas him out, and which could also lead to Borralho beating him up. So yeah, I think there's quite a few reasons to pick Borralho. I'm going to pick Imavov.
Sure. Tell me why.
Yeah, why not? I'm just like, I think he will be able to fight as a southpaw because he likes doing 1-2s. He likes doing 1-2s.
Yeah.
He doesn't like if he liked doing only ones, like many MMA fighters do, I would be much more concerned. But he actually does like try and throw combinations.
Yeah, 1-2s, even occasionally 3s.
Yeah, and when he's feeling extra saucy with it. And yeah, I'm not sure I trust Borralho to fight in his own best interests in this one. So yeah, I'm going to go against my initial, against every instinct, which should tell you to pick the, athletic, faster improving, better grappling, harder hitting person who fights out of a stance that the other guy has never seen before and has never fought against before in the UFC.
I don't know if he's harder hitting, to be fair.
I think he is.
You think Borralho hits harder than Imavov?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think Imavov's
a sharpshooter. He tends to hurt everyone.
Yeah, he does. He's a very clean hitter.
Yeah.
But yeah. So I'm going to go against all my instincts. I just feel like, 1-2s. I think it'll work.
Yeah. I can see it. I do. Yeah, I just have my questions about Borralho still. I was very pleased with that performance against Cannonier, but I also think the circumstances are kind of right in that matchup for his improvements to shine. And Cannonier was not exactly able to adapt in the ways that might have exposed him. It was sort of like there were moments when Cannonier got aggressive and pressed forward and threw more. And those were his good moments. And then there was the rest of the fight where he was at best just sort of competing. And that's just kind of who Cannonier is. He's kind of a strategically a vacant fighter most of the time. And yeah, like for example, what if he had just thrown more straight punches? How good would Borralho's defense have looked then? I wonder.
Yes.
A good straight right hand instead of just always a right hook. Who knows? So yeah, I'll keep it interesting and pick Borralho. I expect he will probably approach this trying to wear Imavov down. And, but I also think that this might be the first occasion where he really gets into trouble with that, where he's against somebody who is very happy to pressure, knows how to cut a retreating opponent off with his strikes, and with his footwork. And, will also, like Conor McGregor style, happily throw himself out of position when he sees the opening. Not fight in a completely textbook manner. And I think Borralho does kind of rely on that a bit. He is taking his weapons kind of offline with a lot of his lateral movement. He is giving ground pretty happily. And he puts himself in a lot of awkward positions with his kicking oriented offense too. I can definitely see Imavov catching him by surprise with a right hand when Borralho is trying to throw like a left knee or a lead leg calf kick or something like that. And just getting his feet out of position and getting rocked. So, a very enticing matchup. I'll take Borralho to wear Imavov down, but I think Imavov is one of the more dangerous opponents Borralho has ever faced. And maybe he's not quite as technically sound as he thinks he is. All right.
Yeah.
Let's take a break on that note. When we come back, the co-main event, Benoit Saint-Denis versus Mauricio Ruffy after this.
Hey everybody, thanks for listening to this week's Heavy Hands. If you like what you hear, please consider pledging to support the podcast on Patreon. Patreon is basically continuous crowdfunding. You sign up to contribute a certain amount per month to help us with production costs and the like, and in return you get rewards ranging from a mention on the Heavy Hands website to a question or topic of your choice being discussed on the show. We have a lot more in the works to reward you for your help, and we appreciate every contribution. No amount is too small. Just head over to patreon.com and find how you can help out, the only show dedicated to the finer points of face punching. Now let's get back to it.
Let's get into our co-main event, Phil. Benoit Saint-Denis is taking on Mauricio Ruffy. And another fight which is well made, and in part because we don't really know how it's going to go.
No.
I think I said when we were just discussing this, the problem with Mauricio Ruffy is I'm not really certain of how actually good he is yet.
Mm-hmm.
And the problem with Benoit Saint-Denis is I think I have a pretty good picture of exactly how good he is. And yet, it's not immediately helping me decide how this fight will go.
No. Yeah, Ruffy definitely seems like one of the more fragile members of the Fighting Nerds in terms of how his game is constructed.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, some of them have already lost, Carlos Prates and so on. Their reign of, you know, being completely undefeated is obviously over at this point. But it's in ways we're going to talk about in other fights on this card. It's not in ways that immediately feel like they match up well with Benoit Saint-Denis. Like, you're not like I don't trust Ruffy in long fights. I have no real idea what his takedown defense looks like because they just put him up against strikers or people that he's completely destroyed. He's got great instincts and timing, but his approach, like, sacrifices a position and risk in favor of those things. Like we were just talking about his knockdown of Yontop, where he does like an anime knockdown of this guy, where he's just like, you know, it's like the unsheathing of the sword and then putting it away as the guy collapses behind you. He's staring off into the distance, like miles away from his opponent, like in the opposite direction as he check hooks him. And you're like, yes, I suppose you are flexing kind of here, but also that's stupid.
Yeah. And it doesn't even, I don't even know how much of it. I mean, he is clearly a guy who is trying to look cool. But I also think in that moment, it's just like, it's probably less that and more that it's just an unschooled left hook.
Mm-hmm.
He's a guy who just twists his entire body. In one sense, a very natural puncher. In another sense, a very awkward punch.
Yeah. And so, I mean, there's two very obvious ways this fight can go. And then, after that point, there's two more obvious ways that the fight can go.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so the first thing is that, we haven't really seen what his takedown defense looks like. He's very keen to get, big fight-ending shots off. Mm-hmm. Benoit Saint-Denis is extremely aggressive and increasingly in recent years tends to go straight to grappling.
Yep.
He just charges people and grabs them. Ruffy will almost certainly put himself directly up against the fence.
Yep.
And Benoit Saint-Denis will simply be able to grab him and hoss him around. If that doesn't work, there's a good chance that he's in trouble. On the other hand, Benoit Saint-Denis is slow and hittable.
Yep.
And will all the time be soaking up, at almost any moment will possibly be soaking up horrific damage.
Yeah, and I'm not sure how much soaking up can be done against Ruffy, right? Like,
yeah,
you might be saturated by the first shot that lands clean, and that's it.
So yeah, that's the thing, is that he could bull his way inside, and Ruffy could instantly kill him, or just put round-winning damage on him before he gets anything significant from ground positions.
Yep.
But or he could just take him down immediately, and we'll just be like, oh, this guy's not good.
Yeah, and even if he does take him down immediately, that's what happened in Saint-Denis' last fight against Kyle Prepolek, who I think was a short-notice replacement opponent. Am I right about that? Yeah, he was supposed to fight He was supposed to fight Joel Alvarez. So he went in there and took what should have been a really overmatched opponent down immediately, and just banked an easy round with top control and grounded pound. And then, he was ashamed of himself.
and got into a disgusting brawl.
Yeah, which really started because he was trying to pressure Prepolek back into the fence, probably to take him down again. And Prepolek just started hitting him in the face every time he tried to do anything.
Yep.
And he had to brawl with him, because if Benoit Saint-Denis is striking and the other guy is still awake, he is brawling. He does not have the capacity to tactically control the fight from distance. And his shots are dangerous and scary, but they're also just sort of selected at random. I think the first clean shot he takes from Prepolek is he's just going for a stupid naked low kick and just gets plugged in the grill by a lead right-hand counter.
Mm-hmm.
Because, what are you doing? You just walked forward and threw a slow leg kick with no setup. That's just kind of how Saint-Denis' striking works. So, there's the other possibility that he does immediately take Ruffy down, doesn't win the fight immediately with it, and then gets knocked out anyway.
Yep.
We know Saint-Denis is tough. He's durable. But a guy who gets hit that cleanly by a puncher as powerful as Ruffy obviously is, there's only so durable you can be to survive.
Yeah.
Dustin Poirier knocked his ass out, landing basically all starting with one perfectly clean counterpunch. So we know it can be done.
Yep. He's not Chito Vera, immortal durable.
Yeah. And Ruffy is a very dangerous puncher. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah. But there's also the idea that, I don't know if Ruffy's game is actually sustainable if he gets into a brawl.
Well, yeah. He's very much a trick fighter.
Yeah.
And
if he's just up against just a very tough, very physical opponent who just drags him into a silly punch for punch fight, does he last?
Right.
Do parts of his game start falling off? Does he still, because he's still going to be going out of position and doing silly things.
Right.
Does he just disintegrate in any kind of way? I think in general, I think I have to probably pick him.
Yeah.
Because it's just a standard heuristic of even though I think that there's a very good chance that Saint-Denis might just take him down early, I still have a lot of confidence that that early scoring offense and damage will be on Ruffy's side. And again, it's a heuristic I generally stick to if I'm not really sure about what's going to happen between two fighters, and I'm I think one of these guys is going to hurt the other one.
Mm-hmm.
It's generally a solid. I generally just tend to go with that because so many things can happen due to it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think I kind of have to pick Ruffy, but yeah, I'm just not sure about him. He just doesn't look like a particularly sustainable fighter.
Yeah. I mean, there's good and bad. What we have to go off of for Ruffy, to judge his sustainability is that fight with James Yontop, which doesn't sound great. That where his longest fight is against a guy who was immediately cut from the UFC after losing to him, a guy who lost a split decision to Vyacheslav Borshov.
Wow.
But Yontop's whole thing is durability and determination. He's just the kind of especially durable guy who could, I mean, he did get hurt badly by Ruffy multiple times.
Yeah, this is the Chris Moutinho, Sean O'Malley kind of thing, where you're like,
right.
Well, this guy did survive, and he was clearly uncomfortable fighting him, but he also got smoked pretty much the entire fight.
Right. And, yeah, like, on the one hand, you can look at the first round of that fight, when Ruffy sort of has to come to the realization that he can't just, he can't put Yontop away for free. And he doesn't, it's not that inspiring, the solutions he comes up to for this problem. He keeps trying to trick him to be like, okay, what if I deliberately step out of position and walk into the fence, and like, this guy's so predictable, I know he's just going to sling something stupid and I'll slip and then cut back the other way with a counter. And it's all like, all the shots he throws, there is no thought for what position he might end up in after he has thrown them. That's what I mean when I say that he's working to find tricks rather than trying to win with any kind of strategy. Maybe this will be the one that knocks him out. But after that, even after he starts hurting Yontop, he does kind of stabilize okay. I think it's not a horrible look when he finally has to realize that, okay, one shot is not going to put this guy away, and I put him down once and then maybe burned a lot of energy going for the finish. Now I have to pace myself. He does actually pace himself. He starts managing the distance more. He starts thinking more defensively. Yontop's going to keep following me, keep throwing stupid shit. I can keep moving my feet, making him miss, and waiting for a good opening. He's still going to throw himself out of position when he decides to attack. And maybe against Benoit Saint-Denis, that means, walking into further takedowns, supposing that he struggles with the wrestling game early. But I don't think Benoit Saint-Denis is a very sustainable style of fighter either.
No.
And he is more immediately at risk in a matchup like this because he is phenomenally hittable.
Yep.
So I'm going to take Ruffy as well. I would like to see more from him. I would like to see more of what we saw in that Yontop matchup, which maybe we'll just have to wait till he reaches a level of opponent who is not just surviving simply because of their durability. Because it's not going to be Benoit Saint-Denis' skill that keeps him in this fight if he is able to stay in this fight. It won't be skill alone anyway. Certainly not striking skill. I want to see what Yontop looks like when he reaches the level that Carlos Praches ran into, an Ian Gary, who can actually just frustrate him and not get suckered by his tricks. But I don't think this is that matchup. I think we're still kind of at the level where Ruffy is going to be given free openings to do huge damage on the feet, and so far that has been reason enough to pick him to win.
Yep.
So
yeah, I tend to agree.
There's the co-main event. Should be violent, should be fun. It certainly could go either way. It really just depends on how smart Benoit Saint-Denis is, and also how good the rest of Mauricio Ruffy's game is. Because if this turns into a matchup where he's just allowed to do Mauricio Ruffy things the whole time, it seems like a pretty surefire win for him.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's take one more break. When we come back, we might just dip into a few of these early main card matchups. We've got Modestas Bukauskas versus Paul Craig, Bolaji Oki versus Mason Jones. We've got Patricio Pitbull versus Losene Keita. That one I think we are definitely going to discuss, but we may touch on a few others as well after this.
Financial support is fantastic, but there are other, even easier ways to support Heavy Hands. perhaps the best is by spreading the word. We know our fan base. You're all cool, popular people with serious social media presences. You're tastemakers and trendsetters. Okay, there are one or two of you that don't fit that description. You know who you are, but no matter what, you can always help us out by telling folks about the show. You can also give us a positive rating and review on iTunes and Stitcher, things like that. We rely on word of mouth and positive feedback to grow and improve, so thank you very much for your time and your help. Now, back to the show.
Welcome back to Heavy Hands. I think we're going to start off here talking about the main card opening bout, which is Patricio Pitbull versus Losene Keita. Might be Keita, might be saying the first name wrong. We'll find out. Pitbull.
The best way to find out, the best and perhaps only way to find out how to pronounce things.
Yeah, is to wait to
being shouted at by YouTube comments.
That's true. I thought you were going to say
we've never found a better way.
I thought you were going to say waiting to hear how Michael Bisping pronounces it.
Oh, that too. But we've typically found out before then because we've been shouted at.
It's true. Although we also get contradictory pronunciation advice from the comments, so it's like it's not really all that helpful at the end of the day. People somehow have different opinions on how names are meant to be pronounced. We'll find out. We'll at least settle on a pronunciation that works for us. But what's most important right now is the fact that this looks like a trap matchup for our beloved Patricio Pitbull. Because
or not.
Well, not a bad matchup, but a trap matchup.
Yeah.
He, of course, had his UFC debut. I mean, like, we have to make the story clear on Patricio Pitbull, for people, I feel, because the UFC audience sort of has, a knowledge of him to equal Daniel Cormier's knowledge of him. Remember when he was calling that fight against Dan Ige and was sort of letting it slip, not even trying to hide it, really, that he had never seen Patricio Pitbull fight before. Had no idea what to expect. He was like, this guy has a lot of knockouts on his record. I know that much. I looked at the Wikipedia.
I'm so glad you're reminding me of this.
Here's the thing with Patricio Pitbull. A very good fighter for a very long time who has, for at least 5 years, been clearly in the twilight of his great career. We are not seeing the Patricio Pitbull you might think of when you hear of his many great accomplishments in Bellator. We're not seeing the Patricio Pitbull who fought Pat Curran. You out there listening to this don't even know who Pat Curran is. That's how long ago Patricio Pitbull started accruing his championship accomplishments. What we are seeing is an old fighter, a faded version of a once really great fighter, making do with experience and craft and guile, because he cannot just go out there and win fights the way he used to. And that's why we were absolutely dead certain he was going to get cooked by Yair Rodriguez, which he did. That was simply a bad matchup. We thought he could beat Dan Ige, but expected it to be tricky, which it was. And now he's in here against a guy who is very raw, but very dangerous. A physical force, a young, confident fighter who's powerful, who's aggressive, and who has already proven against a lot of his opponents, not all of whom are bad. He's pretty well tested as far as regional talents go, that he can make do at that level with just confidence and physicality.
Yep.
I've seen this man get taken down very easily. I've seen him display no guard game whatsoever. I've also seen him wait for his opponent who had much better grappling technique to start passing his guard and then just bench press him off and get back to his feet. That's the kind of fighter we're talking about. And that means that, I think he could very well be a dangerous opponent to Pitbull. The kind of matchup that is a lot of risk and no upside. but whom I also expect the crafty old fighter to solve. It's just the kind of matchup where Patricio should be favored very obviously, but also obviously things could go horribly wrong in an instant.
You know what it is, right?
What's that?
It's an almost classic Glue Factory matchup.
Absolutely, yeah. That's why you insisted we talk about this. You'd think I didn't hear you wiping the drool off your chin when I pointed this matchup out, but I did. I heard it.
Yep. Yeah, because it's someone who, as you pointed out, like, shouldn't really have the technical tools to beat Patricio Pitbull.
Right. He doesn't have the technical tools to beat Patricio Pitbull, but technique isn't all that matters.
Yeah. He's, he's not someone who's going to hang around at range and pick Patricio off whilst Patricio tries to line up his beloved right hand and left hook counterpunches in the same way that, like, Yair Rodriguez would. He's going to go in there and try and take Patricio's head off. Like, he doesn't fight on the back foot.
Right.
He goes after people. And when he does that, he leaves himself very open. He's one of the things that allows him both to deliver power and which makes him quite vulnerable is that he will go in and throw and then simply leave his feet planted, lean back, come back and throw again as hard as he possibly can.
Right.
And he can do this because he's incredibly fast and he's confident. He's doing the Israel Adesanya lean back and throw thing a lot without Israel's level of experience or technique.
Right.
And that can be incredibly dangerous. And it's never really mattered because, again, he's always watching his opponent and he's always willing to throw incredibly hard. And it's just something which shocks the hell out of pretty much everyone that he fights.
Right.
And so, yeah, there's the first obvious thing is that he's going to be very vulnerable to just getting counterpunched by an incredibly patient, extremely crafty, back foot fighter like Patricio can be. And yeah, as I said, I don't think there's that much risk that he's going to just stand on the outside, use his speed advantage and just kick Patricio to death.
No.
I've never seen him fight like that.
Right.
Also, as you said, like, he doesn't look like a very good grappler.
Right.
And we've seen Patricio, like, being perfectly happy to leverage his grappling whilst he was fighting Danny Gay.
Used it in part to beat, and then when he had to survive against Danny Gay, who is a very good wrestler and grappler.
Yep. So, I guess I kind of have to pick Patricio.
Right.
Because I think he's crafty enough to know that there's simply a place that he can take this fight where he's not at risk anymore.
Right.
And he is a fantastic grappler and top position player.
Yep.
But it's also one of those ones where it could look real ugly.
Yep.
Because, I mean, Keita is a tremendous pickup for the UFC. This guy is just like all action, all the time, like absolutely devastating hitter, crushing people with body shots, just melting people up against the cage. He is all action all the time. But, just the kind of guy that you will always want to tune into.
Mm-hmm.
But as we saw with who was the guy that fought Tim Elliott? Kai Asakura.
Mm-hmm.
Also a big, tall fighter with massive power who's always looking for a counter shot and so on, and has often feasted on slightly less athletic or potent fighters. Suddenly coming to the UFC and realizing, people are really good at grappling here. They're much better than the people that I used to fight, and I cannot just hang around and wait for a knockout to come because I'm getting put on my back all the time.
And even at this age and this point in his career, there are a few fighters in the UFC I would say are better grapplers than Patricio Pitbull.
Yeah.
Even if it's just a lockdown game, like if your guard's going to be that easily passed and you're waiting for the moment when he's in transition to just fling him off, Pitbull's seen that before, you know? You think he's never like slid his knee from half guard into mount and the guys try to throw him off in that moment of transition? You think he can't float his hips? He can't wait for you to like overextend your arm and expose your back and then clamp onto it as you're trying to explode to freedom? Yeah, this is definitely a different level technically, than anything Keita has experienced. And yeah, I would fully expect Pitbull to be able to hit him really clean on the feet too. I just also think like here's the problem with Pitbull striking. He is an accurate counterpuncher with great timing, good distance management, knows how to make the guy overextend to land the perfect shot. I don't think he can really like calculate far into an exchange like he used to. And he can't take shots like he used to either. And just being able to land one perfect counterpunch may not make the difference. I mean, it says something he was able to hurt Dan Ige badly. Who the hell else can say that? He also
that one step knee from what's his face? God, I'm forgetting people's names all the time now.
We're both old now, Phil.
You know, grapply, athletic Rory McDonald type guy.
Grapply, athletic Rory McDonald type guy.
Yeah, the guy who step-kneed Dan Ige. And,
oh yeah.
Movsar Evloev.
Evloev.
Yeah.
That was not a helpful description, but then you gave me the specific and I was getting there. Yeah. Exactly. One of many examples of Dan Ige's insane toughness, or just eating like uppercuts from Calvin Kattar or whatever.
Yep.
Eating full power shots from Korean Zombie. All the biggest punchers in the division have hit Dan Ige, and Patricio Pitbull managed to hurt him.
Yep.
He also couldn't sustain it.
Damningly also something which made Daniel Cormier feel like he'd been validated in his read.
Yes.
Of Patricio Pitbull.
I guess this is just what he does.
Yep. Just hangs around and just lands one nuclear shot.
Which, to be fair, it kind of is what he does now.
Yeah.
Not what he used to do. And, but it's a little thin, that approach to fighting. Like, he's doing a Tyron Woodley for these last several years.
Oh, yeah.
And that doesn't just mean that he can, like, the opponent can, rack up more points. It means that, like, he's going for one hit, one kill. And he's kind of lost if that doesn't result in a kill. Like, he's sort of reverse engineered himself into being not too dissimilar from what Mauricio Ruffy is doing.
Oh, no, he's worse than that, because Ruffy at least has the weirdness and the sort of young man's belief that he's constantly figuring out his opponent.
It's just a style that demands that things go pretty perfectly, or else he will be fighting for survival. He will be in bad trouble if things don't go perfectly. Or he will
simply be having incredibly close fights with people. Like, he beat Ige relatively cleanly, but that's because he landed two big shots, basically.
It was still very close. The third round, he was getting hurt, and he had to wrestle to save his bacon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, he's, the person he's most like now is frankly, Rafael Assunção.
Yeah, actually, yes.
Although weirdly enough, Assunção, started throwing a bit more towards the end of his career, and Pitbull is going in the other direction.
True, yeah. Yeah. So, how can you not pick Pitbull to beat Keita? There's, just the obvious opening of the wrestling and grappling game to shut him down. But it's also very easy to see this as the kind of fight where the plan is working perfectly until something goes wrong. And at the very best, Pitbull fights cleverly enough to survive.
Yeah.
And maybe doesn't get the chance if he just gets hit clean at the wrong moment. So yeah, that's why I call it a trap matchup.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's one that he should win it. And he might not.
Yep.
I do wonder what the circumstances are. Like, the UFC, clearly has no interest, not that they even necessarily should, of like matching Pitbull favorably. But I do wonder, it's barely a month and a half, if that, since his fight with Ige. This is like 3 times this year since he got to the UFC. The man wants to be put through his paces, I suppose. But the UFC is, in a variety of ways, like maybe there just aren't a lot of comfortably winning matchups out there for Pitbull anymore. I think that is the case, actually. But
yeah, I think, we basically spoke about that. We were like, Dan Ige is kind of it.
Right.
There just aren't that many other matchups in this division, especially towards the upper part of featherweight, that he can actually, that you can pick him in.
Yeah, and it wasn't exactly comfortable, even that one.
Nope.
So, yeah. We'll see. I'm certainly curious. Again, if Pitbull has his way, it may not actually be a very fun fight, but there is always something
that is what we're going to have to say every single time Pitbull fights for the rest of his career.
It's true. For him to win, he's gotta suck the air out of the arena, but there's something just compelling and enticing to me about that kind of matchup, right? Getting to see the crafty old vet pull it off one more time against somebody who actually has a future in this sport, unlike Patricio.
Yes. Or alternatively, getting absolutely splashed.
It will happen again before his career is done. I'm sure of that.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Well, I mean, that's pretty much a full segment we've spent talking about that. Do you have any pressing thoughts on a matchup like Bukauskas-Craig that you want to get out there before we close shop?
Yeah. I think I'll probably pick Bukauskas at this kind of stage in their careers.
Sure.
Yeah. I think Paul Craig's just kind of lost it at this point.
Certainly. Yep. Yeah.
Nothing else. There's a bunch of, it's a mostly kind of interesting card. Most of the fights have some kind of element of intrigue to them.
Yeah, a lot of these are matchups that don't jump off the screen on paper, but upon further inspection, you realize they're actually pretty well-made fights.
Yeah, Belagioki, Mason Jones, pretty decent. William Gomez, Robert Rushala, it's fine. Umar Sy, Brenton Ribeiro is it's decent for a light heavyweight fight, but
yeah, I mean two guys who might be able to do something in this division. It's a sensible matchup. You said they're in the Alonzo Menefield zone earlier. Obviously, you should have called it the Alonzo. Huge.
Yeah, but I really should have, shouldn't I?
Huge missed opportunity.
Catastrophic.
Yeah, it's all right. It's a fight night undercard. Doesn't have to be great. There's at least several interesting, well-made fights sprinkled throughout. And again, I'm looking forward to that main event. I think it will be meaningful for the future of the middleweight division. And I think it could be a very interesting, possibly very messy fight. And as always, I hope that we learn something new about either Nasruddin Imavov or Kyle Borralho, or both.
Yep.
Okay. Well, that'll do it for this week's episode of Heavy Hands. Thank you to you all for listening. And I suppose you can find us on social media. This is a good enough fight night card. I may actually be on Twitter this weekend posting about it when it's happening. So if you want to hear my inane thoughts as the action plays out, you can find them at Boxing Bush on Twitter. You can also find Phil on that same site at Evil Greg Jackson. You can, about once every 3 months, find me on Blue Sky at King Typo. And we'll talk to you next week. We have this card, of course, which I trust will give us some interesting things to talk about. What's the following card looking like? It is, Noche UFC is back again. Diego Lopez versus John Silva.
That will be a banger.
Hard not to be excited about that. So we look forward to talking to you all about that one next week. And until then, if you came here today for the finer points of face punching, you came to the right place. This has been Heavy Hands.
Yeah, Diego Lopez's marquee win being Brian Ortega is not aging well.
No. But also he is just clearly a tough, dangerous SOB, right?
Yeah.
I mean, him versus John Silva is just a great fucking matchup. What can you say?
Yep.
It's just gonna be fun.
Yep. Patrick Wyman.
Yes, absolutely.
Fully erect in his coffin.
Yep. The earth over Patrick Wyman's grave is suspiciously 3 inches more elevated than it was the day before. All right, man.